classes, skills, and pretty much the nuts and bolts of itemization and numbers in the game. So really save all of your really hard pressing questions for Eric. He really likes that. Writing and lore. So there'll actually be a session on lore. Will come tomorrow. That's going to be delivered by Wynn and Lawrence. So that should be a really good one as well. More fun. Trials, Dungeons, and Dragonstar Arena will come up after that, given by Jeremy Serra, who I don't know if you've met before, but Jeremy is awesome. This will go on to some of the pressing questions that I've read about, like what about longer raids and things like that. So Jeremy will be able to address those questions. Then we have also the justice system, rounding it all out, where Scott Nixon will be giving the presentation on the justice system, and I'll be there for moral support. So. That's kind of the schedule as it rounds out. So again, if you think your questions are on specific things, go ahead and wait for the session for specifics, so you'll probably get the best answer. But again, we don't want to restrict your questions, just wanted to say this is kind of the lineup so you'll know when to ask specific questions.
And to be perfectly honest, we cheated a little bit and read the Atropos posting on what questions should we ask the sauce devs when we're there. So we all read through that. So
we would never read the boards ahead of that. Okay, so we're there.
I'm actually going to go get a printout for everybody of the schedule.
Okay.
It occurs to me that it did change a bit. As I said, it might. Between when I send it out to you and what is actually happening.
You want to use the clicker?
I don't need the clicker. I think we just have a couple of
the latest in presentation technology.
Did you copy your stuff over?
Yeah, it's all okay.
So Jared Carr is the art director for the game. So he's responsible for the way the game looks, and in many ways, as you'll see, the way it feels through combat animations and so forth. So he's going to be concentrating on how we're making combat better, more responsive, and more fun. Jared Carr.
Good morning. First off, I just want to say thanks for coming. I know that there are a lot of places that you guys could be right now, and very happy that you're here. We appreciate you guys. As Matt said, this session is going to be about combat responsiveness. If you saw the presentation at QuakeCon, I touched on a little bit of these topics. So we just wanted to get a little more information to you. And we have members from the team here, and really just wanted to open this up for dialogue between you, to kind of get your concerns and get ideas from you about what you would like to see improved in the game. So, excuse me, I'm out of breath because I ran up and down the stairs trying to get my team. So first off, we have Sean Miller, who's our animation director, who's going to cover all the animation improvements that we've been working on in the game to make combat look and feel better. So,
Hey everybody, as Jared said, I'm really excited to have you guys here. It gives us a great opportunity to kind of talk to you guys, show you some of the things that we're working on, and get your feedback on the things that we're doing, and really make sure that we're aligned with the things that you guys want to see as we go forward. So really excited to be able to share that with you. So one of the things that we've been doing as a team is taking a look at the experience that we have as a game post-shipping and taking a look at the feedback that we get from players. What are people saying, especially when the game first came out, how people responded to things that they were enjoying, things that they were frustrated with. And we took a look and we kind of put all those things together into something that we could focus on as a team. That became the combat responsiveness. What is combat responsiveness? It's not just the click on the button and something happens, which is really important. It's the feedback that you get. We wanted people to always know what was going on. That was something that's a goal for us with the animation going into it. It's also improving the flow of the combat. It should be smooth. When do I, when can I attack? When can I use my ability? Did I successfully attack? All those things are really important to the flow of how the game goes. We also took a look at some of the issues that made the animations seem kind of buggy or broken. You know, there are things where, well, how much of it is lag and how much of it feels like lag, but it's not. Where are the things that players are actually doing? It's great when you suddenly have thousands of people doing stuff. You get a lot more feedback about how people are actually going to use the things that you did. Also, in a game like this, the system kind of matures over time. So we wanted to also take a look at the lessons that we learned over the development and sort of start to apply those to things going forward. How can we make things look better? How can we make things feel better? So we went through all the classes and the weapons. We took a look at the animations that were there. Wanted to make sure that we had clear silhouettes, make it easier for you to be able to tell what weapon someone was carrying, what weapon I'm carrying, being able to also immerse you down into the player a little bit, into the gameplay a little bit better. The attack timing was really important. Obviously, combat responsiveness, that's our #1 goal. Does it feel responsive when I click that button or when I release that button? Does it do what I expect it to do? And can I do what I want to be able to do? So we took a look at it not just from the keyframe animation. We also looked at it from a text standpoint. We kind of took a look at all the different things that were starting to come up. We wanted to make sure that it was clear when you can make your next attack, and some of that stuff seemed a little bit mushy. Some of the feedback that we got was there were certain things people didn't understand when they could do it, and just, you know, we wanted to make sure that you knew when an attack had successfully gone off and when you connected with your enemy, and all those kinds of things are important in combat. Obviously, you guys know that stuff. Also, I wanted to make sure that the weapon choices felt meaningful, and that's not just from a design standpoint. There's a balance issue of you know, I have a giant sword. It's going to be, I want it to feel heavy, I want it to feel powerful, but I also don't want it to be so slow and ponderous that I don't want to use it, but it's going to do more damage. So all those kinds of things we had to take into account. And the goal is not to change the game out from underneath everybody, but to enhance it and kind of embrace it. And so we took a look at things like the impacts, you know, how we were handling them, when they were happening, what they look like, not just on the enemy, but also in how we were communicating with the player. We'll see some video I'll show in a few minutes that'll kind of, you know, we'll talk a little bit more about how we handled some of those things. The flow, making sure that the animations flow smoothly between the heavy and light attacks, and when you're using your abilities, we want it all to feel like a realistically fantastic experience. So the first thing that we started with was we took a look at the sword and shield. That also is that encompasses a bunch of things, but essentially it's the baseline for the medium combat kind of speed. We wanted to make sure that it felt smooth and natural. We wanted to make sure that the attack windows that you had to use were very clear. When can I do my next attack, as I mentioned? When can I use an ability? And we wanted to make sure that visually it was never jarring or distracting. So I'm going to show a little bit before and then a little bit after. Of course, you guys are familiar with the before because that's what you guys are sort of playing in now. But I think it's really useful to kind of see the comparison of what we had and then some of the things that we are doing to it. Do we have sound? Get the sound up? Shing, shing. So this is the before, kind of taking through the first person and third person kind of experience. There are some hitches. There are things where we were trying to solve the issues with hitting. I'm just going to pause for a second. When we were hitting, we had hit stop in so that you could tell when you hit, but it felt more like laggy or broken. It didn't feel like it was part of the flow of the animation. So what we did is we changed up some of the poses, the postures, but we also changed the energy behind the attacks, and We made it. We put stuff in there that actually used the same kind of an idea of stopping when you hit something, but wanted to make it more visceral. We wanted to make it feel like when you successfully hit it, that weapon turned in the flesh of your enemy, and just to add that kind of a feel to it. I swear there was audio.
They could be muted on the computer.
I'm gonna, when this is over, I'm just gonna take a quick look at that. It says here that there's audio. So you get a sense, even even with the blocking, we wanted you to be able to do your interrupts and have that have a good flow.
Nothing to see here.
I'll just keep talking. The next up is going to be the two-handed sword. So, having our baseline, there we go. Thanks, Lemon. Perfect. So, appreciate that. We wanted to make sure that the sword, as I said, when you have the two-handed sword, we want it to feel heavy, we want it to feel powerful, all the things you expect of a two-handed sword. We wanted to make sure that it didn't feel too slow, and I will say that your damage per second, that stuff is not the kind of stuff that's going to change. Eric, actually, you'll talk to him later. He's going to talk a little bit about the balancing issues and the things that we do to help make sure that that experience stays consistent with what you expect. You sort of see the hit stop that we have in there, where the sword kind of hitches. The flow of the combat is a little more. It has a slower pace to it. We do have the concept of misses, so that the misses feel like misses, but they didn't necessarily work as well with the rest of the combat animation. So now you get you still get a slower, heavy weight to the sword, but the flow works a little bit better. You can see when the sword connects, it reflects off of the enemy, and when you're doing your misses, the animations, the movement flows smoothly from one thing to the next.
Yeah, it's really the speed change. You go from slow to fast with the attack.
Yeah, I can't wait for you guys to get it on your hands, because I gotta tell you, when you get in there and you play it, it just it feels so good. I'm looking forward to it.
Well, it kind of looks beforehand like you're swinging into like some tar and you get stuck on it, and then you follow through. But the after looks a lot cleaner follow through.
Yeah. So if the sword, if the two-handed sword is the sort of the ultimate sort of in the heavy, the dual wield is something we wanted to feel fast, agile. We wanted to feel quick. So we did some things where we changed up things so that when you're doing your multiple fast attacks, it doesn't get repetitive and it feels different. And we wanted to make sure that it had that's the sequencing and kind of, so why is it left and why is it right and when does it play, those types of things, and flowing between the heavy and the light attacks. So in the cleaned up one, we've stood them up a little bit more. The animations go quickly between one and the other, so you can really feel like you're fast and agile. Kept the flavor of the attacks, we just smoothed them out a little bit, and on the whiffs, we made it so that they flow a little bit better. Next up was the bow. So with the bow, the changes were pretty subtle here, but we wanted to make sure that when you were using the bow, that you felt like, you know, the fantasy archer that we expect. We wanted to make it feel fast and fluid. There's the changes here are a little bit more subtle, but the pace in general is a little slower. We didn't have to worry so much about the differences between hits and misses with the bow. So then move forward a little bit here.
I like the stealth aspect.
It doesn't like that I fast forwarded. So now you can tell that it's live. All right, we'll go ahead to the next slide. So we got a lot of stuff to get through today. Another thing we took a look at was the staff. The staff was something where the flow of the staff combat, well, it's used a lot in the Raged, and it's really powerful. It didn't feel as smooth and satisfying to use. So we took a look at, just at the base level, the flow of how we were handling the going from one animation and one movement to the next and one attack to the next. And I wanted to make sure also that you had a better sense that when you were channeling, that we were building up to something. To communicate when you're going to hold out for that heavy attack, that you're building towards more damage and whatnot. So this was actually where I think we were the most successful in being able to communicate that. We also wanted to know when you had a target. Because before, the way that it was handling it, when you were channeling, and if you didn't have a target, it wasn't very clear. So we worked to fix that. We also were able to create a unique silhouette, just like when you have different kinds of weapons. You have a two-handed sword versus a one-handed sword. We wanted to make sure that when you were using different kinds of staffs, if we could get that to feel a little bit more different. So we gave them some different stances, and we gave more flavor to their base level attacks, not just the special attacks that we have. So we're going to start off with the fire, the destruction fire frost. So this is what it was before. Fire flies from the end, but doesn't always necessarily. If you're trying to do optimal flow for combat, it doesn't always come from where you expect it. It doesn't always work the way you'd like it to. Now we have a much faster flow, and we wanted to make it feel like you were controlling the magic, so that the magic in our world has some weight to it. When you're channeling, you'll see that it behaves differently now when you don't have a target. Your fast attack works as expected. Actually, no, I take that back. That's on the next one that we're going to see that. We didn't necessarily need that with the fire. I apologize for that. But on something like lightning, it became really important because you had to have that connection between your magic and what you were doing. So here you'll see sort of some of the changes that we made to the lightning attacks. The lights feel very similar, but now you can see that build over time as you're lighting your enemy up. It's a very different stance when you have a target versus when you don't. And when you're blocking and interrupting, we wanted to make that feel a bit more natural and powerful. So we were able to also give the restoration staffs a little bit of a different feel. So now we've got a different kind of a personality when you're just standing, and the attacks still very responsive. And when you get in and you do your heavy attacks, you can see the longer that you're holding it down, you're getting a sense that you're building and you're drawing that that magic. So, you know, all in all, I don't have stuff today to show you on how it flows with the abilities. We're working on that right now as well. That's a really important thing, because especially when you're in the heat of battle, the flow of these types of combat moves and your use of abilities and all that stuff has to flow really smooth, and that's something that's really important to us. You know, getting rid of that sense of false lag. What are hitches in the system? What are things we can do to make it flow is really important. And then where are issues where we actually have those kinds of performance and things. And I think Rob's going to talk about some of the things that we have on that. Afterwards, we'll have some Q&A. I'd love to hear any feedback that you have on what you saw, and if you have any questions. Thank you.
So next up we have Rob Niquette. If you remember from QuakeCon, I talked a little bit about the particle effects culling system that just went into the game recently. Rob was responsible for that work, and he's going to talk a little bit about that stuff today.
Yep. But I remembered that the one thing we did before that, which was huge, was weapon swap responsiveness. That was the first thing we did on the team, kind of at the beginning of summer. And that, just as a quick summary, there was two aspects to that. One is I have to rebuild your character, which to suit the new weapons, and you wouldn't necessarily know this, but the way in our system that just takes, we have to go and grab so many files, and it just takes a long time just to get resources off the hard drive. And the second aspect is there is a server round trip to does the weapon swap happen. So when we looked at the worst case scenario, your weapon swap could take 2 seconds. So that would be, if I simulate a really slow connection to the server, that would be half a second there, and then if I simulated a really slow hard drive, that would be 1.5. So I said, okay, obviously this doesn't work. So the first thing we did is we pre-built your character with his other weapon set and took 1.5 seconds off of that worst case. So now all you see on weapon swap is your latency and your server response time. So that was the first thing we did. That went out in August, I think. So then the next thing we moved on to is just looking for opportunities for performance improvements in our worst load, which would be Cyrodiil, large scale battles. So one thing we have there is your awareness range is very far in Cyrodiil, and in some cases you know about something 100 meters away. And when something's 100 meters away, it's pretty small on your screen. So we did a little analysis, and we just figured a simple culling rule set to reduce the particle effects. Because the other thing is we have a fixed number. So we have a maximum number of particle effects we can simulate, and we're just hitting the top. We're just hitting the max all the time in Cyrodiil for a variety of reasons. So we just saw that this is an opportunity to reduce that load. So this went out, I think in 1.44, I think. There was probably just one line in the patch notes affects prioritization system. It might have been the update before that. So here is kind of a before video. These are NPCs in a test area, and I've made tons of things that are really far away. And you can see all this combat going on in the distance. Our particle number is in the bottom right. We're pretty high. We're pretty close to our maximum, like 3/4, 80% maybe. So with some simple, difficult to implement, but simple distance rules, we're able to just say, there's a line out there, where we stop the particles. So look at these guys way in the distance. You can see they're there. They're animating. You can tell they're fighting. We're just not showing their projectiles or any of their, particle effects. But you still know there's stuff going on. And now watch as I get closer, these particles, they turn on. So that's where we are now. So, and we felt like, we got some savings in terms of getting off of our particle caps. And in general, we think, you don't see a problem, right? I think it still looks natural. And then just to reveal the radius, I have a debug feature so I can see there's the radius. So you'll see there's a group that's going to come into radius and they'll just light up. That's the slider that's in the graphics options, particle suppression distance. So if you think you've got a pretty beefy computer, you can always turn it up. So yeah, this took a bunch of work. We rolled it out recently, and it helps. So that you can see in this situation that I showed you, it's everyone spread out. They're outside of like a keep walls. And if you're in that situation in Cyrodiil where there's a lot going on, everyone's spread out, this is helping. Like it's reducing the amount of load in your system. Unfortunately, as you could probably guess, if everyone's in the same spot, that they're not beyond the distance, right? So everything's active. So we have obviously a few situations that are kind of our worst case scenarios right now where everybody's focused. They're all sitting on the flag at a capture point, or they just took a wall down and everyone's like the pitched battle at the wall, right? And everyone's together. They're all within that suppression distance, so it does not help there, but it helps everywhere else. This is live now. This went out in, I think it was 144, which was a couple weeks ago, right? Last 2 Mondays ago.
2 Mondays ago.
But I might be wrong. It might have been the update before that. I don't keep track.
2 Tuesdays.
Yeah. Yes.
I don't want to be a negative nanny on this, but that's not
Fine.
our experience in game.
Okay. What's your experience? Because we want to hear it.
My experience in game in Cyrodiil right now is that I'm so lagged and so bogged down I can't even notice a change in combat responsiveness.
Yeah.
The culling is causing standards and bat swarms that you can't even see. And I can clearly see the difference here, and I'm excited when I see this, and I'm like all pumped and stoked, and I'm going, but this isn't what's happening to me and the people that I'm playing with in game. And I don't know if other people are having the same situation, but it's particularly since 1.4, the lags and the crashes have almost made Cyrodiil unplayable for us.
Yeah. The crashes are something else, but
yes,
and we're working to fix them.
Yep. I'm just saying
You're
I don't experience this not because this is bad, but because
Right.
there are other things.
Right. You're right.
So we'd actually like to talk about and try and figure out what those specifics might be, so that we can give the engineers some better clues as to dig into those things. We have Rob, we have Colin McGinley, who's another client engineer. We have Brian Axelson in the back, who's a server engineer. Ed and Dave, some animators. So any questions about this stuff? That's what we want this time for, for us to begin developing an agenda for what this group is going to be doing going forward. So other topics are some things that I've heard. There are problems with CC break, and we've anecdotally heard about these issues, but we've had trouble actually digging into to determine what the exact problem is. So any information from you guys would be super helpful for us. There are other topics that we can talk about, but we want to hear from you what those things are.
So my first recommendations for when you experience bad performance of the client, there's a couple of external things that can kind of ruin your day a little bit, that I can't control. And so I just want to put those first, and if you're already doing them, then your experience is, authentically probably, an issue with our stuff. So one of them is if your patcher is open, and sadly it thrashes your hard drive a bit. So you gotta close it when you're done patching. And there's nothing I can do, but it just kind of interferes with our ability to access the hard drive. All programs really. There's new options in all the browsers, all the web browsers nowadays, and it's on by default. And it's called hardware acceleration. So it's kind of hard to find these options; they're a little bit buried. But it basically, it's trying to send some stuff to the graphics card, and we're getting contention with our game, and it's basically like you're running two games. Like two separate apps are going on the graphics card, and the browser doesn't need to do that, and it really slows us down. If you could turn that off, because obviously everyone's got a browser open, right? Like you put that on the side, you're looking at stuff, and so if you didn't know about that, take a look at it. Yes.
It's concerning some performance.
Yeah.
I had some reports of people telling that sometimes when you add the CPU with multi-core, the other core is not being active.
Mm-hmm.
And there was some kind of trick, like changing something in the BIOS system to allow the game to activate the core that were deactivated when you were not requiring a lot of performance for your computer. So I don't know if there is something that you know, or
I'm not familiar with that one. I'm skeptical that it works.
Me too, but
we actually, we do have certain areas that in our game that benefit from multi-core, and we parallelize up to 4 cores for certain operations. So there's just certain times. The other cores, I don't know how good the reporting is for those, but we'll just light them up every once in a while for certain phases of our updates, but it's not constant. So they are definitely helping in certain localized areas. Yes.
When you run those tests, so you run them like 100% local? Like when you have all your bots, are they local to this building?
Yes.
So you have absolutely no latency issues?
Correct. We have ways to simulate it, but you're right. Like the things I do at my desk are not your experience, right? And that brings us to a really important point. There's a whole class of issues that arise in the live game that do not happen readily here in the office, right? So these are most of the issues that get out, right? That we don't catch them. There's a real challenge there.
On the culling system, we actually did organize a playtest on PTS where Rob was actually profiling on the live servers while that was going on, so we could get better information. So as these systems come online, we're making that a practice, so that we can just get better testing and better numbers. So.
And when I profile the game, I go directly to live. I learned that lesson shortly after launch. That's like the only real data, right? Is what's on live. It's none of our internal stuff is the same. So. The third thing I would look at if you have poor performance is just make sure your video drivers are updated. If they're not, and who knows when a new update is released, you kind of have to check for that periodically. And then the last one is we all use lots and lots of add-ons, and there's nothing preventing an add-on from just doing lots of work for no reason. So it just depends how they were coded. I encountered one like 2 weeks ago that I used that it was just asking us to do tons and tons of work for, it was a crafting add-on. So, that affected my game. And I didn't really look into specifically how it was coded or how often, but it was hammering us. So, what you can do is you can say, here's my experience with all my add-ons that I love, and just try for a few minutes, just turn everything off and see if that freed up some frame rate. And, if it didn't, then your add-ons are good, right? And we obviously have plenty of work to do on our side, performance-wise. But you might have found that you have an add-on that's really creating a lot of load.
Benchmark test for add-ons or so.
For what?
A benchmark test for add-ons. So if I started an add-on, I can make a benchmark test, and I see if the framework also is better or not.
You would like us to create a benchmark?
Yeah. So
Maybe, yeah.
I can install 100 add-ons and
Yeah.
Actually already do that.
I think the best test is play,
okay.
maybe.
Not many add-on authors do, but you can. Tools are already there.
Yeah.
For what?
Within the API, there's tools to already benchmark
Yeah.
add-on performance.
I don't create benchmarks.
Sure.
Don't create add-ons, but I load them down and try them
Yeah.
out, and I often have the problem I can't come into the game because in the loading screen that one loads too much information or so on, ESO head and what they are add-ons, and that would be good, more responsiveness from the add-ons, from you to get if the add-on is good or not good, or if there's no problem, and so on.
Yeah.
Because you didn't have a minimap, I must have the minimap add-on, and the first minimap add-on I had didn't work in Cyrodiil. I can't port from the way shrines to the castles because the add-on don't work with this minimap add-on. And that's a problem. More responsive for the add-ons would be good.
Any other experiences?
I got something. So when you say it's thrashing the hard drive, one of the things the reason I don't ever notice it, I'll be watching Twitch TV, 1080p, 60 games in frame, or 60 FPS in game. I don't have an issue with the hard drive because I use a RAM cache.
Yeah.
So any reads that are going to the drive aren't actually hitting the hard drive. Is there anything you can do to sort of cache some of these calls that are going on from the client, the launcher?
We do. Well, from the launcher, we're not. We didn't write the launcher.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's not our code.
Not your code.
Yeah. It's built on a third-party software that we've limited options.
Okay.
I mean, just a callback to close the launcher when you start the game.
Yeah.
Like you're not patching in the background anyways, so.
Or whenever you hit play, just have it close automatically.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, it's a good idea.
Another question I have for you regarding the combat responsiveness in Cyrodiil is what your guys' take is on macros that create animation cancelling.
Yeah, I was
I'm not in charge of that. see that? I just dodged.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm not letting you off the hook that easy. Who is? who will we talk to next time about that?
Address that? Sure. So, I'm Chris, by the way.
Chris Strauss.
I'm the lead UI designer and working with Jared on the combat responsiveness team. So I was talking yesterday actually with some of the programmers to determine what are some of the behaviors that are being reported with macroing and animation canceling. One of the things that's been tricky for us to determine is how the specific animation canceling combinations are being played out with the abilities to do some of the behaviors that are being reported. It could be a potential data issue with one or two abilities that we're trying to track down and determine if there's specific cases that you know of that, hey, if I do X, Y, Z, it's resulting in this, or if another player has done that to you, you definitely want to look into that and figure that out. From what we've researched, we're trying to make sure that there isn't anything that would let you actually circumvent the intended behavior that's in the game. So you shouldn't be able to cancel a whole bunch of things and fire off 5 abilities at once, for example. So if there's something like that, we definitely want to know how that is being done. We're looking.
If maybe we can get together then at some point, because afterwards, when maybe next week or something, I'll send you a link and show you a macro that we put together that it'll not only, it's with light and heavy attacks and using venom arrow with a bow. What will happen is actually the light attack will prop for triple damage like every third or fourth hit and double damage very frequently.
Yeah, that'd be great information.
Yeah,
for
and
us to have.
that's obviously game breaking when people are running around with that kind of stuff.
And to be clear, anyone that uses something to play the game for them is a cheater. Yeah, that's your basic question.
I'm not saying, it's kind of like we start getting into the ethics part of what's cheating and
If they're
what's not
exploiting a
cheating.
bug, it's kind of on us to fix the bug. But if they're actually writing macros that use screen space and screen grabbers, and you know people that do that, that's cheating.
Yeah, and it's being used like on Razer.
And the problem is, it's
now,
almost
so
impossible
that's-
for us to prove.
Yeah.
Because the information we get is that they're just doing it really fast. But, you know, players know when they run into players that are doing this. So if you just report them to CS, it'll eventually, if enough players report a player cheating, eventually action will be taken.
But even if like if you know of specific examples,
Yeah.
I'm sure Gina and Jess would be, you know, more than happy to get that down. We want to look into that. We want to make sure that those scenarios aren't breaking the game.
And on some level, animation canceling is a problem in every game. It's just we can do things to make it not quite as big a problem. We just get information to us and about which attacks they're exploiting.
Yeah,
most.
even, and obviously, you know, I know we're on stamina and magicka-based pools and everything, but even like putting in like it might have to have like a little timer that you can only use Venom Arrow once every half second or every second, so that you can still do it manually and probably not notice a difference, but that it would hinder the people that are doing the macro.
That is traditionally the way that you
Yeah.
fix those. Yeah. But just get information to us. And we'll...
Question back here.
Just with the animation canceling, you can pretty much do it to any ability with block.
Yeah.
Like any ability, as long as you block afterwards, cancels the animation, you can follow up with another one.
Yeah, we just have so many instants. So many of our abilities are instant cast. It's like instant. There's no time in between except for the cooldown. Right, sure.
Yeah, so I've got a couple questions, but one that's sort of related to what we're talking about right now with the canceling, and not necessarily animation canceling on abilities, but in terms of like the roadmap forward for combat and the way that it feels in general. So the way that, for example, attack clipping works, or clipping an ability usage by blocking halfway through it, does the way that those mechanics operate in game exist because the animations work that way? Or do the animations exist to support that mechanical structure of combat? And if so, what's the roadmap going forward?
Do you want to talk to that a little bit?
Yeah.
Attack clipping and...
I can talk a little bit towards that. We have an underlying combat system that controls when you can attack, and actually one of the things that we've addressed in combat responsiveness is try to get the communication and upfront a little bit more, so that we're communicating more during the animation when you need the information, because people are kind of clipping things out. Things like when you can block, and those are kind of design choices to be able to allow you to always be able to block. When they're getting exploited to kind of break the game a little bit, they're complicated problems for us to solve. There's not necessarily animation driving that. We're actually trying to work within the system to give you the best visual experience while
So the animations are supporting the mechanics in this case?
Yeah. And there was an issue which we have fixed, which was when animations were canceled, effects were not playing and audio was not playing. So you actually weren't getting the visual feedback that an impact actually happened, even though an animation wasn't canceled. So that visual and auditory experience has been cleaned up, just to make that clearer. So in other words, you could execute an attack, cancel it, the animation would not play, but the impacts wouldn't play, the sound wouldn't play, so you wouldn't know that. Right. So what's that?
And the health bar wouldn't update.
Right. So there are a lot of these little issues that we're looking into to just clean up the experience so those visual cues are clearer.
Can I make an initial point on this?
Yes, Colin.
I'm Colin, my name's Kirsten. So part of this all stems from block, and initially block is deemed to be like the most important action that must happen no matter what. So no matter what you're doing, you decide to block, the guy blocks. And so that kind of trumps everything else. And that is kind of one of the core parts of the combat system. And of course, that results in a lot of the exceptions of weird things are happening with animation canceling. And I just would like to, if you block while another ability is going off, do you expect that previous ability to complete successfully, or would you expect it to be essentially cancelled and not do any damage whatsoever?
Logically or in practice?
Because yeah, I mean that's the thing. Is it preference, or is it stylistically? Is it design choice? And yeah, people can argue either way. Like I did it, therefore damage should not be done. But it's like, well, I kind of have did it, so it should go off anyway. So, and we had that was a big internal debate when the whole system was going in and which way it would go. We tried both ways, and it definitely felt off when your initial ability, when it got your block, came in and interrupted it, that it didn't do anything at all. It felt bad. But I'm wondering whether perception-wise that's a bad thing, and that there's something to hold with that. People can feel one way or the other that they like the way it is right now, but we're just not communicating it well, or that it shouldn't have been that way in the first place.
So, I'm sure everyone has ideas here, but I mean, I love what you said about block and how it's like the most important sort of reflexive, instinctual reaction that the player can take in the game, and I think I would totally support that as something that should continue. But part of the problem with blocking currently is that it's not really being used as that sort of reflexive, reactionary mechanic that it really should be, because people just hold block the entire time.
Yes.
You're just using your abilities, holding block the entire time. No one can CC you, no one can put effects on you, no one, you take half damage. Everyone, you'll just use your stamina for that, use magicka for everything else. And so it's not an action combat experience. It's not a combat, it's not responsive. You're just holding it, and you get that benefit passively. So I feel like blocking, I agree with what you said. It should override other things, but if you override something else with a block, you should override it with that block. You should block instead of doing whatever else you were doing.
Yeah, and I noticed something that comes up a lot when I talk to you guys is that if you are already blocking, you should not be able to use another ability.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about.
It's one of the two, because basically blocking is like just become another shield that's stacked on top of everything else. It's on permanently, and you cast out of it, and because it's on permanently, you don't even have to reactivate blocking. It's like people are hiding behind it.
You might as well just tape your right mouse button down.
And the way
That's right. I should say like the timing aspect of it, like so many.
Well, there's no time.
There is no time because it's on permanently. It's on permanently. And again, I agree with the Tropos. The way that you describe it is how it should be. It should be that, oh wow, something's coming in. Let me block this. Let me dodge that, and then it overrides that. But that whole interaction aspect of that is negated. It's non-existent because it's on permanently.
Yeah, because if you rebind your interrupt, you can cast any ability. Doesn't matter what it is while blocking. It's as if blocking itself should cost stamina. Because if you're holding your arms up, eventually you're gonna get tired. It does if you get hit.
Yeah, when you get hit.
But if you're gonna hold it, you should eventually drain out of stamina so they can't do it.
Yeah, and that creates the other problem for the stamina builds, because again it puts the magicka builds at an advantage because they use stamina purely for blocking with that perma block, and the stamina based builds which we're trying to move towards to make them more viable and more playable, they're almost penalised against the magicka based builds that perma block. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to put your hand up.
I have an idea that could be a solution if we took another bar for blocking into the game. So it's not based on stamina if you block, but based on another bar like stamina 2 bar. And if you block, this bar is used and not the stamina, because at the moment, so like you say, if you block, you can do everything, at the same time, and characters who use very often Magicka are can block more than characters who use stamina.
Maybe you could toggle it between whether you wanted it to draw from your Magicka pool or your stamina pool. Could be a relatively easy solution.
Could be a solution for this problem.
In my opinion, I think if you block, you shouldn't be allowed to do something else.
Agreed.
Because you can easily abuse the system. For instance, you can see a Dragon Knight using permanent block and spamming lava whip, for instance, which makes no sense to me.
I remember
this is a conversation we really should probably have with combat team. Do you guys think?
Like when Eric.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Eric
there's
gets
some really
me
good
tomorrow.
ideas here, and I know I've also heard the idea of the longer you block, the less effective it gets. Like it basically becomes completely ineffective.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of potential
solutions,
but I think it's a good note for us to take back, and we can certainly circle around with those guys as well. So,
I have a question from.
Yes, second row.
Okay.
Second row.
Not for blocking, and I don't have experience with a tank build because I only play 5 months caster.
Yeah.
So I didn't use block. I don't know what block is. So in the dungeons it's okay. I must go outside of the red cycles, and then it's good, wonderful, and casting. But I hear it often from my tank guild members and so on. They said the responsiveness. If I hit hard, or if I be hit it, or if I in ego perspective and don't see the red cycles on the, it's a problem. They say, well, I'm hitting the boss and I block and I block and I'm hitting the boss, but they don't see in the ego perspective there is something coming or exploding. They always have to play outside the character, and some players loves to play inside in the ego perspective, and there should be a shimmering in the screen or something if something to come.
Indicator.
Indicators.
This is the man who is listening.
They will explode in 10 seconds something. Okay, 2 seconds something, and so that's a tank.
That's great feedback, and it's something we've also discussed internally. You know, there's definitely certain feedback that you get when you're in third person versus first person. A good example is the area you're talking about.
Our tank every time is dead.
There's
bosses, he's dead. Why you are dead? Oh, I don't see anything. Okay.
That's something that, you know.
Always in TS. You must go. You must go.
Yeah, no, it's tricky, especially in, you know, first person with some of those, you know, more intense combat scenarios. But it's definitely something that we want to look into on combat responsiveness, like what feedback is getting lost in first person that you would normally expect to get while in third person. To your point, you know, as an example, it'd be great to just kind of say like, hey, let's have a shimmer or a screen effect that's at the bottom of the screen. There's a lot of things that we end up having to consider when we're doing some of that.
And always the I hit or I been hitted. How hard I hit or how hard I'm hit. It's just a little tricky in German.
No, I understand what you're saying, like getting more of that kind of impact of getting a smaller hit or a larger hit.
It will don't work more blood, that's,
Right.
But something, the enemy will drive more away or
feels the energy.
Or I will, if I get a hard hit, so I don't look every time there on the red
health bar.
On the life bar, so I will know, oh, this was hard, I must go away, this it's harder than so in Fungal Grotto, the first boss, the gift poison on the ground. I stay in there. I think, oh, a little bit poison, but it's hard. It's yeah. I'm dead in 2 seconds or 3 seconds in this poison. This poison is harder than other poison. So, but I didn't get this. I have to have more reaction, more information.
I think that's a great point too.
Then recaps, then I'm dead, so.
That recaps will help you out.
The dungeon mechanics are different because they're designed to learn as you go.
Yeah, but it's
what to
so,
avoid, what not to avoid.
When I did in real life, I didn't I don't have a dead recap. But if I hit the hot plate on the oven, I know, it's very hot, it's a little bit hot, or so
and now you know the poison and fungal grotto.
Before I'm dead.
Hopefully it only took you one time to realize that. I actually have a basic question for you guys. How many of you ever play in first person? Ever? Well, more than 5% of the time.
Oh no.
Probably more than 5% of the time.
Do you? Okay.
Depends what I'm playing.
Yeah, we've
I
always
like to play first person with both.
Because there's really no way for us to track if anyone actually does it. So we know what we do, but I'm just curious to see if you guys do it.
Yeah, I did most, when I played, I just did most of the story solo, and I did all that in first person, and then when I felt like I was getting more into PvP, I started just noticing I'd scroll back, so I couldn't see stuff.
Yeah.
But I mean, I really enjoyed being in first person for talking to NPCs and even questing and things like that.
Yeah, it's wonderful because you see the mobs.
Yeah.
Greater and their scars in the face.
Yeah, you see detail.
Yeah, it's wonderful, but I don't play so because I don't see the red sign and so on.
So on that point, how many of you want to play in first person but don't because the feedback is not clear enough?
I think if it was more responsive, a lot of people would. But the fact that if you play first person in any PvE or PvP combat, you're pretty much gifting yourself. Right. Because you don't have the ability to see what other people can see. You're playing at a disadvantage in a sense.
You're always going to be at a disadvantage in first person. You can't change that because you can't see behind you. But
in a PvE place, I mean, seeing behind you really isn't as important because you're always moving forward. There's never anything coming up behind you unless you're in a boss fight.
Well, I would say respectfully to I am a tank in PvE, and having the third person view is absolutely crucial. Like my camera in DSA is spinning around in circles. I'm looking behind me every second. It's impossible for me to look straight ahead for more than 2 seconds because I have to chain something or CCM or block, or if there's a charge coming, I get in front of it to keep them from charging into my teammates. And that also, that tanking or healing I don't know how you guys could do it, but it would be literally impossible to effectively do it in first person. Because as a tank, I make it my personal job to block charges into my party. And that also came into a funny thing I wanted to ask you about. I wear Hisbark 5-piece light on my tank. Was it designed to dodge charges? Because in DSA, the Wamasu came and I dodged him. I was like, whoop! And he ran by me and he killed one of my players. Because I was intending to block it, but I juked him.
That's a good one.
And he ran straight through me and killed 2 of my guys. Because they were standing behind me oh, Nick's got this. And then I juked it. I dodged it and I was like, I don't know what just happened, guys.
Tell me again, what's the dodge ability?
From the Hisbark.
From the Hisbark.
No, Hisbark does it automatically.
Okay.
And is it meant? Because it literally jukes everything. If Zeus threw a lightning bolt at me, I could juke it. It jukes projectiles.
Yeah, I'm not certain on that.
We have to ask Eric.
Wait for the game skills
and abilities. We're related to him.
Yeah, and then with the combat system, the Hisbark is cool. I'm doing Michael Jackson dance moves and stuff, which is cool because I'm woo, and juking stuff. And the underlying problem, it looks cool, but I can't tell when I'm blocking, and it freaks me out as a tank. I'm panicking because I'm doing this and stuff. And in DSA, the second my block is down, I am curb stomped. I am dead. I'll get hit by a volcanic room and then just get smacked by a Centurion the second I land, and I'm dead. And with the weapon swapping is awesome. Thank you so much. like, because I think like 3 moves ahead every time I'm doing something. I'm like, bars are like this, and I don't use macros. But it's like sometimes when I weapon swap, my block drops and I don't even know it because my Hispark is, I'm moving around and I can't tell that my block has dropped because my shield's doing this when my dodging animation, and I can't see it. And the only indicator of that is, as far as I know, is FTC. I switched over to Surrender because I just got sick of FTC. And unfortunately, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry.
You had a question a long time ago.
Yeah, it's about the particle effects.
Yes.
Could you just layer the particle effects so I could strip it down as I needed for my gameplay? So instead of, you know, having the full-on sparkles and everything, maybe it just has a shield effect so I see someone's hit, but I don't get the full effects of it that's dragging the machine down. So I could literally choose from my machine on the slider bar, I want this much on screen, and just layer it.
How the trick is, like, how do you decide what other things you really need to know?
It'd be easier for us to do it for you. It would be very difficult for us to do it for everyone, because everyone would want different.
Well, I mean the
types of
actual
particles.
graphical effect, because it's got several steps in the animation itself. Couldn't you say, okay, there's point B, point C, point D in it. This is where, okay, the lens flare kicks in here, the sparkle effect kicks in here, and then I could just kind of pull away, or just give me the ability to lower the particle effects.
Do you mean like a level of detail?
Yeah,
For the particle?
just for particle effects, so I could strip it down to its bare minimum, so I could see it happening, but I'm not getting that full in-your-face machine hog.
So the issue you're trying to address is performance?
Right, but I think it would help with the Cyrodiil issue too, because you wouldn't get the whole, you know, it's great using an NPC setup because but they use a timed battle process. If you got a bunch of guys dropping impulse as fast as they can, and you got 40 people doing it around you all at once, that's going to have a bit more of a system hog than what you were showing on there. And if we could control that ourselves to say, okay, I want to see this going off, but I don't want to see, 30,000 pieces of fairy dust on my screen.
Yeah.
Part of the issue is that we did not design the actual ability effects themselves to scale in that manner. So to do we could do a system like that. That would involve us actually going through and recreating all of the effects, so that, based on a slider or some set of parameters, they would scale down in a predictable way. At this stage, I don't know about a systematic way to do that.
It's tough because also, like, depending on your role or just your preferences, you might want to see things that other people just don't care about, right? Like, I don't need heal sparkles visible necessarily, unless I'm a healer. I need to know who's got it. But as DPS, I don't really care that all those other guys have it. It doesn't matter to me. So it's tough.
Right, but your abilities are already basically color-coded as it is. If you look at the healing, they're all a yellow color anyway, so you know healing's going off regardless of having the sparkles. So as long as you just saw that, almost say it's like a yellow outline or a shield or something, at least you know that it has gone off, but you're not getting that in-your-face effect.
Right. So, yeah, I guess then it would be just a simple LOD system, but I think we would still have to go in and specifically author those
thousands of parts system.
A lot of work.
A question about the visual effects, especially area of effects. For instance, in Cyrodiil, I had to make a clear distinction between spells of my allies and spells of the enemies. We often see red circles. I feel like that's clear, but sometimes we don't see. We can see the area of effects of our allies, and we don't know, should I go there or not? For instance, the standard, Dragon Knight standard. We don't know if it's our own standard or if it's the standard of the enemy, so we don't know if we have to go there or not. So it's a big issue.
Blue cycles for blue, yellow cycles for yellow, and
we can do the green and red circles on an ability by ability basis.
And also visual effects about when you're stunned, disoriented, or off balance. Sometimes we can't see that, especially in mass combat in Cyrodiil. Sometimes I can't move, but I don't know if it's because I'm immobilized or if I'm stunned.
In some,
and it's very difficult to know.
In some other games, in this red cycle is the logo of the emblem of the alliance. So you can see red cycle, there is a dragon head. Ah, it's a good faction.
Yeah, I'm in the red alliance.
Yeah.
Red is good.
Yeah. No, they can all be red, but the emblem
flag.
in the must be the falcon or the Mary or so.
Yeah.
The name.
Sure, I think it would be pretty straightforward for us to do a DK standard that was alliance specific.
Or at the red cycle, so very small objects, so there is not a big emblem in the middle. So on the red cycle, there are some indicators of the alliance or so something. You know, this is a bet from the enemy. Yeah, this is from a mob. Yeah, there are Dedra.
It'd be easy enough if they just stuck the logo of the realm on the standard.
Just make it red and green. Green helps, red hurts.
Could be the word standard could be green or red. The word standard could be green or red, or so you can visually see adds danger.
One of the suggestions we had for
Richard?
was put the alliance flag on it.
Yeah, so about effects calling, sort of on that subject. And I'm sure you probably already have some logic behind what gets called, other than just the range slider. Maybe.
There's a little more, yeah.
But it occurs to me that there's definitely things that players care about more, and there's a definite priority in terms of relevance of effects, like a weapon proc, like your weapon procs a fire effect, like that doesn't matter.
So we talked about that kind of thing. Sorry to interrupt. We talked about that kind of thing as we were designing it, and we didn't take that step until we got sort of the first implementation of the system out there to see if that was going to solve the problem and do the trick. So, would you like to see those additional priorities?
I would. I think that would make a lot of sense. I mean, if you cull out, before you even think about range, like if as a first slice you cull out weapon procs, and then, for targets that are sufficiently far away, you cull out direct targeted effects, like player A targeting player B with a single target spell, whether it's a heal or a damage. Like, that's not relevant to me if I'm 100 yards away. But maybe at that same distance away, if someone's dropped a Dragon Knight standard, I do care more about that. And so, if you call out the weapon effects, you call out single target spells, and then after that, maybe you've got area of effect abilities that have a higher rendering priority, independent necessarily of the range. And then even on top of that, like ultimate abilities, the way that the game is currently structured, those are so game-changing. Like, I would want to see those even if they're further away. I might not care about the single target regeneration heal that my group mate's doing on me, but I do care about the Dragon Knight standard that's 100 feet away. So,
Is that, do other people agree with that?
Yes, I agree. I think we would have to agree upon what the prioritizations are, and I'm not disagreeing with yours, but to get at least within Cyrodiil what the general consensus amongst the player base would be is what are the most important things for you to see and what are the least important things for you to see, and then there'll be a whole batch in the middle that will never agree upon that you can kind of like
I think
that is true about
in Dark Age this was inside, in Dark Age of Camelot, there was this option to say my effects, my group effects, or all effects.
But most people just ran around looking at the ground.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, because the leg, yes.
I think you had your hand up.
Yeah, I was wondering, it's kind of on the same effect as culling, but with siege weapons, is there any way that you can hide foliage when you're zoomed out?
To hide the what?
The trees.
Oh, yeah.
Because I always seem to find a place where I throw down the trebuchet and
That has been
zoom
on the
out,
list of
and then
our
all of a
stories.
sudden I'm like in this bush and I can't see anything.
There's a
That's happened to me a lot.
It's not just that, but it's even things like when you go through a door and there's another character there and you're seeing the inside of their skull. And
Yeah.
There are a lot of issues that touches on.
The other one with that,
Thanks.
going on to that, is also the use of siege weapon, particularly on your home keeps. Your 3 home keeps. If the outer walls are breached and you're trying to put up siege weapons on the inner keep, unless you can put it up on the corners, if you're backed up against the wall, you have no way of seeing where you're shooting or hitting. And obviously you've got the problem because you've got the wall behind you and you can't take the wall out from the game, but maybe have an option of being able to stand beside the siege weapon so that you'd still have visibility or something like that, so that you could see where you're shooting. That might help resolve it.
So, it's like on the topic of what Atropos was saying though, it does sound like a really interesting idea, because I don't know if anyone else would agree, but in some cases the user experience in Serial, like you're saying, a lot of people stacked on the flag, is like it's like a 100-man army moving in a small area, and as they approach, you can feel your game start to lag and slow down. And they get really close, you start pressing buttons, just nothing's happening. And then all of a sudden, you're on your load screen, and then all of a sudden, you're logged out. You know, so it's like, I don't know if that's a graphics issue or a server issue. I'm not a computer guy, so I don't know, but it seems like something in there could be optimized, maybe.
Right, I have not experienced the log out, so I can't say where that came from. But obviously, when there's a lot of players,
we've seen reports of it though. It's just never happened.
Yeah,
yeah. Even like crashes and rollbacks and people being logged out. Anyone else experience this?
All the time.
I also know Brian, when he talks with you all, that he's gonna at least touch upon some of the crashes and some of the things he may have details specifically on.
Oh yeah, I don't know if that is like a wrong.
No, I mean, it's great to ask anything. I was just gonna say, I think Brian was gonna touch on some of that a little bit as well.
In the PvP section.
Dan, I was also wondering if there's any kind of prioritization with, like, in particular healing spells that heal over time. I'm seeing my friend die in front of me, I'm targeting towards them, and I'm spamming that heal button, and my heal's going over there, going over there, going over here, but it's not going to my friend who's dying over here. It's going to
just turn around.
There is a prioritization, but if it's not working the way you expect, definitely bring that up to Eric.
Okay.
Not to defer it to.
No problem, I just wanted to know if that was an animation issue or UI issue or what, but yeah, if you're even, like, you're trying to target towards somebody saying, this guy needs priority on my heal, you know, it just seems to go anywhere but there.
What section is Eric in?
He's going to be first tomorrow morning. Yeah, player abilities. Yeah, but if it's likely ability data related if it's because they have a logic for how it determines that, and if it's, but I'm not going to say it's not UI in the sense that if you're looking at something and you fire it, it's not firing the way you expect. It could be anywhere from the data up to the client.
That's kind of why I'll ask it here and I'll find who to ask.
We would start with Eric, just saying, hey, is this set up the way we expect it to?
Okay. You had your hand up. Sorry.
Yes. I like how you guys did the priority list and stuff for abilities, but the self-procking, like when you do a proc, like a crystal shard proc, it's still kind of low. Like I'm in the middle of the battle, I can't tell when the procs missed the cast. So is there any way to the list?
Can you remind me which proc you're talking about?
Crystal Shard's the sorcerer one.
Yeah, I know, hit him and then stun the other guy. But is there something on yourself?
Your hands light up
while casting.
that you can do against the cast. So not while casting.
Oh, that, yes. The random chance for an instant, the next one is instant.
I'm
not sure what we do to visualize that. Okay, I'll look into that.
We'll make a note of that.
And there's a few little nitpicky things, but like you could be like 2 feet after a bolt escape, and you're like 2 feet off the ground. But a lot of times you're like rolling at the end of the bolt escape, as if you fell a long distance. I don't know if you guys are aware of this.
It is based on forward velocity.
Yeah, during that roll time, you can't, weapon swap or use abilities.
Good.
Man in the green shirt.
It feels.
The animators have a little bit of control over when and when you cannot use abilities, and there are basically 2 cases where they disallow it, and that is during roll dodge and wall rolls, and that's essentially because your character is in a circle on the ground, and being able to cast abilities during that time looks kind of weird, and so it was deemed that looked so broken that disable abilities.
Well, the thing is, I'm like 2 feet off the ground and I'm still rolling, so.
Our intention was that roll wouldn't happen unless unless we're falling and taking damage. So if it's happening with horizontal velocity, we can definitely pick it.
Alright, thank you. One comment on that. If you spam the healing spell as you're falling, when you hit the ground, you will cast the heal before you roll, and that can allow you to instantly heal yourself from the ground. Use that a lot to jump off keeps.
What kind of heal are you referring to?
Breath of life, anything that's instant, basically. If
Not
you
the
have
ground
to target
ones,
the ground,
yeah.
you won't be able to use it, but if it's an instant spell, you can use it.
I can do it for me. I take this one.
Yeah. Is there something reaction, or does it put one moment. Passt dieses Buffen und so jetzt in dieses Thema? Also dass ich mal Reaction bekomme von Buffs? Which buff I have, which buff has them up, and I don't see them anywhere. I don't see a timer. I only must see and look at my character and look there.
So his question is if there's a chance that we get a better input of which buffs and debuffs are active on that character.
Buffs and debuffs basically on the heads-up display, the HUD.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we always try to communicate with
yeah,
particle
so
effects.
we definitely there's a lot of feedback regarding wanting to get more information on the HUD. It's something that we're looking into. Nothing right now that we can announce, but we're looking at everything from is there anything more we could do to communicate it visually? Is there anything more we could do on the attribute bars? We didn't want to just straight up put buff icons on the HUD because a lot of the buffs are short and we didn't want it all to just be blinking all over the UI. So that's where we started with the foundation for, hey, let's try to communicate the overall effect that you're getting on the attribute bars. Sometimes that works great, sometimes it does not. Part of what we're going to be looking at on combat response is like, is there a way we could communicate that through better messaging in the UI, or is it not just the UI? Is it something with audio cues? So I know that's not necessarily an answer, but we're aware of it, and we're going to look at further ways of improving that, but nothing we can announce right now.
Quick question, it's 11:30, do we need to stop, or can we keep going?
Do we have any? We're till 12.
Yeah. Oh, we're till 12,
Yeah.
okay.
Do we have any more combat responsiveness presentations? Okay, it's all.
No, it's all with people, yeah.
I'm gonna bring up weapon swap again.
Sure.
For some reason, it seems to be counted as a spell, so when you're in a negate field or something, you cannot weapon swap. It feels
Really? I did not know
really,
that.
really
Yep.
bad.
Can I tag on to weapon swap as well?
Yes.
Is it possible to take weapon swap away from being a toggle ability? Because if you're experiencing lag and you really need to get to that second bar to heal yourself, and your bar swaps, then it swaps again because you're spamming it, to move it to a, let's say you're hitting Alt tilde for bar 2. So you can spam one button because you say, I want to get to bar 2 and I want to make sure the server knows I want to get to bar 2.
We consider that two different bindings.
Yes.
Right?
So you
said
like doing it from memory, so not even having it switch, just do like Alt tilde and then 2, and it would just do that skill in the background.
That would be something, or a second binding to take you to bar 2. So you're not hitting one button being bar 1, one button again for bar 2, because then you can go back and forth, but just one ability to take you to bar 2. Because when I was playing in beta, that was the first thing I noticed. I hit level 15, I'm in the beta, and I'm trying to get back and forth, and this was before the improvement, so it took even longer. So it was much more of an impact when you hit the wrong bar. And so I'd ask Wicked, I was like, hey, can you make a add-on real quick to change my bindings? But that's not in there.
No, we'll discuss that.
Yes.
Would it be, this is a suggestion, would it be possible to maybe be able to weapon swap on a horse? Because there's times in battle you're like, oh man, I gotta get this other the other side.
Yeah.
More question for you. I don't know if there's
Maybe.
That's true.
Animation-wise,
I can't remember if there's a conflict in any system about that, but maybe.
We'll write it down. I didn't know if there was something with like, we'll talk about this.
Hiding your weapons when you're on a horse, so you don't necessarily know what you have.
Flying off cliffs when you're on a horse.
I do like the death animation when you die on your horse, because the horse is laying there with you. Never knew that was in game, so I
I would like to see more visual effects when someone is on fire, for instance, or having a poison or a disease or something like that. I can see the effect on some creatures in PvE, but in Zero Deal I can hardly see this kind of damage over time on the people or on the enemies, or even on allies. I would like to see more spectacular effects when somebody's on fire, you know, so we can see that, yeah, this guy is having something on it.
I'm not sure if this is an animation thing, so bear with me. In Cyrodiil, a lot of times, like, there's a big change that happened in 1.3 with all charge abilities. Like, during the duration you're getting charged, you're rooted and can't use any abilities. It really messes with the flow of combat, for me anyway.
You mean charging up a heavy attack of your own, or
just like
a guy is charging at you?
Someone's charging at you using any charge ability. And if you're getting cascaded by these charges, you can't do anything for the entire duration. It feels very stiff. I'm not sure if you guys would, this would be a bug from animation or
we have we have several things where, especially like if a projectile is on the way and it's going to stun you, like we might be displaying it in a time delay, but the stun is not delayed and it has to be obeyed. So we're cleaning some of those up. And this could be another example of that. It's like the stun is on you and we're just not showing the charge early enough, so it might be one of those.
It doesn't feel like it feels more like a root more than anything, but you can't do anything. Even if you're blocking, you know, it's just, I don't know if it's ever been brought up before. It happened at 1.3.
Just kind of going back to what our European counterparts were saying earlier, and the debuffs and the spectacular effects. So I understand that you might not be able to right now implement more like buffs and debuffs in the heads-up display, and I understand you guys want to have more immersion for the player, and that's awesome. But what about considering like loosening the grip on the API a little bit, so if the player wanted that information, to put it there? I mean, is that something we can conceivably talk about?
It's, so, right now where the API is at is, basically, we want to, it's a delicate balance trying to make sure we open it up so that everyone can use the API the way we hope that you'd like to use it, as well as making sure that people don't have, you know, necessarily an advantage using any of the things that aren't exposed to the default UI. We are kind of always looking at, is there ways to open up certain other areas of the API, but we also want to be kind of, you know, cautious of like, hey, can these be used in malicious ways that most normal add-on developers would not necessarily use, but can be used in ways that we didn't even expect, you know. That's one of the concerns we have with opening up a lot of the things with the buffs and debuffs, and even some of the things related to the chat, because players can and were using those in ways where we did not anticipate to automate a lot of the things that were happening in combat. It's you know, it's definitely something we're always looking at. There's nothing that we have to announce right now in terms of additional things that we're opening up, but I definitely encourage, if there's specific areas where you feel like it should be open and that you can't see how it could be used maliciously, let the community team know and we'll look into it even further. But it's basically, you know, we're always looking at, hey, what can we give to the players, what the API that we have for new features, existing features, as well as what is we have to be a little bit more careful with it.
Well, I can just piggyback on something Chris said. If there's anything with buffs, debuffs, hot stops, roots that you can communicate better through animation, let us know.
And even in the UI,
numbers and the countdown timers, you know, have their own advantages, but sometimes it's just not known.
Right, like, and tying into that, even with the UI, like as an example, I know one of the things that we'd like to do is when you have any effects that are showing up on your attribute bar, if you have it, if your bars are already filled up, it fades them out. well, we're talking about like, well, it makes sense to kind of keep that up because you want to know what the overall effect is on the player. But if there's suggestions that you have on the default UI as well, in terms of like, you know, what still keeps you in the experience of looking at the world, but what are the key things that we're kind of missing out on, that no matter what we do with the animation or the VFX or the audio, it's just not working, then we can kind of look at, okay, what is, you know, a generic concept? Like, is it just like, you know, as an example, one of the games I worked on in the past was a mobile game, a lot less real estate that you have to work with, but we kind of had like a general concept of like, here's a debuff that means you're slowed down, here's a debuff that means you have less damage. So we're definitely looking into ways that we can do it on the UI as well, where it makes sense to reinforce the VFX and the audio. But we do prefer to have, like, you know, you be able to get that messaging as much as possible in the game.
So I think that's a little unrealistic in a lot of cases. Like it's a very noble idea, but there's just too much going on. Like specifically, like say if you're fighting like a full man raid boss, okay, you might have a tank apply Pierce Armor debuff to the mob. That might change your decision about which ability you use. Oh, now it's got an armor debuff. Now it's got a spell resistance debuff. There's no way to know. You know what I mean? There's no information. And it's unlikely that you're going to stack like 25 animations on this boss. Like, oh, there's elemental drain, and oh, I see this little kink in his armor. He's got pierce armor. I mean, it's just you're never going to be able to optimize. And it's one thing with like, you know, some like the higher level players that you know practice and they know the tank's always going to have that upper. They're always going to have elemental drain up. When you're talking about like a casual player trying to defeat a new boss or something like that, not only do they not know if the effect is active, and then they fail, you know, or for various reasons, like they don't do enough damage, they fail, I don't know why. They don't even know that they're not doing it right. You know what I mean? Having that kind of UI feedback allows people to optimize the play. I mean,
no, I mean it's good feedback, and like I said, you know, part of the combat responsiveness isn't just in the world; it is also on the UI side that we want to see if there's ways to improve it.
We've got you a lot already. We'll come back to you. Yes.
Okay. I have a question for you, the UI, and I mean, without an add-on, I cannot see the hit points and the percent of a boss, for example. So I just have to load one add-on for this, and I'm a player who loves it to play without any add-ons. But it's very important for me in the new arena or in the PvP to see how many lives the bosses or the other players have. And could you make this possible?
I'll
build it in.
I'll build it down. I'll definitely talk to programs, see if it's something that we could include as an option to toggle on and off for the players that want.
I would say 25% is the break point, because that's where a lot of the executes come in. So maybe just changing the bar to like a dark red or something when you hit that. I think that's probably the most important one, because that's when everyone starts kicking into the high DPS mode.
The problem with the health bar that collapses from both sides is it's hard to do the mental math on what percentage is remaining. Like if it was a one side down and when one end stays where it is, it's a lot easier to do that mental computation. With both sides collapsing in, it's really hard to. You think the boss is at half health and it's like at 33% because the visual, optical illusion of.
To go back to the combat animations before that were being changed, everyone always says dual wield is so much fun, and I always wonder why. And then when you put them side by side like that, I noticed why. The game's very cinematic, and you lost a lot of that in the combat initially. It didn't feel as cinematic as the rest of the game. Now, one thing I noticed with the dual wield, it's very, very flamboyant. Like there's flourishes, there's changes of grips on the weapons. Your sword and board and your two-hand, they don't have that. It's just slash, 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 slash. And it feels very kind of boring and not part of the, you know, disconnected from the rest of the game and the whole cinematic way of things. So perhaps maybe adding more flourishes and making it feel a little bit more flamboyant, a little bit more showy, would make it feel more exciting to play.
Changing your grip or something?
Yeah, like changing your grip on your sword, reversing your grips, like things like that. You know, even like the whole Spartan style of attacking with your shield, maybe on your third attack that you smack them with the side of your shield, like things like that, I think would create that whole action feel.
But animation canceling does ruin a lot of that. If you have a broadsword and you cast an ability during a light swing, you're not going to see one or the other. because it's going to pick one of the animations and show you. So you don't see those awesome abilities you just showed because you're doing two things at once.
That's one of the things we're trying to balance that out, because especially at the high level of play, a lot of the flow of it isn't to watch the rest of your light attack. So we're balancing right now, and we're kind of asking ourselves, well, how deep do we go with those variations? Because the way that people are playing, you're not necessarily going to see it. In my heart, it's near and dear to want to make those really cool flourishy animations. But we're also trying to balance it against what people are actually going to see in flow of their actual gameplay. So it's really good feedback to hear that you want. How many people kind of agree with that would like to see more flourish type variations? Does it matter whether it's light attacks or heavy attacks? Abilities, making abilities more showy?
Yeah, I use heavy attacks to restore stamina now. It's awesome.
So, I'm sorry, heavy attacks, where would you want to see the flourish? Where would be the
I think in any style, anything that has a continuous flow to it, instead of just seeing the monotonous chop, like you're chopping wood, anything that has a continuous combat should have some sort of action cinematic feel to it, because you can't have a game that's pretty much a live movie and then have a combat thing where it's a guy chopping a wooden dummy. And that's kind of some of the times that you get that feeling. And if you got rid of that feeling and flowed it into the game as a whole to make it one giant experience, I think it would really cut down on people's complaints about issues with combat.
So you mean even like if you're having like a dagger, like on an occasion there's like a stab, and then like that's just random?
Well, if you watch the video when the dual wield is done, if you, especially first person, notice that when they stab, he would reverse the grip and roll the dagger around in his hand and hold it the other way. There's no reason you can't do that with a two-handed sword, where you just, your next swing comes up from a backhanded swing, or, you shift your grip a little bit to stab out, or anything. Just something that changes the monotonous of the chopping the wood.
Yeah. Or even something like you said about the Spartans, where if he is holding blocking, he does do a light attack, he can do it over his shield. Right? Maybe he isn't blocking because he obviously can't block at the same time, but he can have that animation.
Cool.
Exactly.
Black jacket?
So I wanted to go back to the one-handed shield responsiveness. One of the problems that we've been having is that when you weapon swap while holding a one-handed shield, or when you roll dodge while holding a one-handed shield, your block drops while you're doing that. And that causes problems when you have various stacked effects, such as a boss using a power bash on you at the same time as you have to roll dodge out of a lightning bolt, for example. It has caused a lot of problems with that, especially with Dragon Star Arena, where there are a lot of different effects being stacked together all at once.
Yeah, it's like build off of that when run out of like red AoEs, and then right when you roll out, you get hit by a power attack, and you're just knocked on your face.
But
You
should
don't
you
even
be
see
able
it
to block
coming.
and roll dodge at the same time?
I don't think so, but it's kind of the responsiveness of the combat under the current scenario. If block were to be changed, then that wouldn't be a problem, but as it stands right now, it's a problem the way the game currently plays.
Did both of those attacks come from the same monster?
Not always, but sometimes. Like, for example, I can give you an example of Dragon Star Stage 4. The boss uses Cinderstorm and Power Bash, and often what he does is he drops Cinderstorm and then immediately goes into a Power Bash. So you have to quickly roll dodge or wait until after the Power Bash, which can cause problems, especially when there are other adds stacked on top of that, because there is a Battle Mage there, and it uses a negate field plus like a circle that forces you to roll dodge out.
Yeah, it's a little harder to coordinate multiple monsters, but it's like definitely like one guy who says you need to roll and block at the same time, like that kind of sucks. Yeah, that's probably not something we should fix. So. You're next.
Okay. Two things for casters. We are often talking about tanks. Casters have a pet, have two pets. Have the Twilight Daedra and so on. And there's a question in my guild. I didn't know before that I can control them a little bit. There should be a button how to control the pet. I don't know. My pets are always attacking. It's okay. But they ask about a pet UI or a pet information window or a pet help.
Controls,
Pet help. If you cast your first pet, you will get the information. With this, you can defensive, you can attack it, or let attack it, or not attack it, and so on. So pet control would be good. And there's a second thing in this. My first time in Cracklawn was last week. I played 5 months, and so I see the first time the ritual with the priest who must cast and have a live button, a big live button.
Yeah.
So like the end bosses, they have a big live button, but there the live button is for the priest who get killed, and so it's a little bit complicated to understand. The bosses, okay, they are dead, but then the priest is dead, and the priest should be.
Are you saying that the friendly health bars need to be
friendly
differentiated
health
from the enemy?
in green? Would be a good thing. So I know that's a green health bar, and above that there's a red health bar, and so I know this is my friendly character. This is this is an enemy, or pet control, or a friendly control window. So I see. Okay, this is.
We actually talked at one point about making friendly health, be green as an example.
Yeah.
Then you get the flip side of like, oh, is that their stamina?
Yeah.
So it's it's definitely trying to figure out what's more.
What about just putting a green border around it?
That's also an option. So
yeah, green border. It's a red.
Okay, I got one more quick thing. Just a suggestion for fear. There's no animation for it, so when you're in PvP, you're rooted and you're feared at the same time. You're like, what the heck's going on? Because you don't have any animation or indicator to tell you that, hey, I'm feared, I need to break this. So
he runs, right?
Is there any way to put some like animation to know you're feared?
Well, he runs. So
But
it's
if you
locomotion
run-
animation.
For every control.
Don't run, so.
I would say for every control spell, because sometimes it's very hard to make a distinction between, hey, I can see that I cannot move, but I don't know why I cannot move. Is it because I'm immobilized, or just because I'm stunned, or because I'm sometimes also fear and immobilized at the same time?
Yellow puddle
So
appears under
how
your
can I
character.
react? Should I dodge, or should I CC break, or I don't know. And a couple of seconds I'm losing just to determine why I cannot move is just the seconds that make that where I'm killed.
It's part of it. So clearly there are communication problems with you're rooted or stunned or whatever, and you don't know why it happened.
It's just the lack of animation.
But are there also problems where when you try to CC break you can't, or when you try and get out?
Yeah,
you
so
can't?
also some issues with the unstoppable skill, where you have it on you, but you still take the control effect sometimes. Don't know that can find a situation where I can have a very good example and show to you when it happens. Because it happens sometimes. So, but yeah, sometimes we have the unstoppable on us, and we still are stunned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those are one of the ones that it's very hard for us to create it internally, like in a clean situation.
To reproduce it, to really dig into what exactly the problem is. So we're very interested in this topic, and anything that you could actually write down for us and send to Jess that could go to the team, that would give us specifics that we can really dig into, we would love that information.
And also, when you completely lose control of your character, you can't trigger any skill anymore. The only thing you can do is just to quit the game and relaunch the game sometimes. Don't know if you have already see
Yeah,
that.
it came back. That was there at launch, and we fixed it, but then it somehow came back. Less frequently than it was originally.
Okay.
Yeah, we have to isolate and figure that one out.
Yeah, just really quick, I do have a question, but really quick about his question and fear. it occurs to me that you already have a really nice effect in the game. It's the like creepy ethereal spiders coming down. It's in like Spindle Clutch. It's really obvious, like you're freaking out. There's these like ghost spiders. I mean, that or something like it. Like there's like this ghost or something on your screen. I mean, that sounds cheesy, but like something like an overlay on your screen that would be very obvious that you are feared, and that's why you're not taking action. I mean, that effect already exists in the game, so plug and play. And it's an instant improvement.
Like a urine puddle underneath your character.
My actual question, to change gears just very slightly, is actually about sound, and we don't have like a sound segment, but it's really related to combat responsiveness and feel, so maybe I can feel it anyways. Not
we can bring in we can bring in audio guys like in one of the other sessions.
I will play games other than ESO.
Yeah.
And one thing that I always notice when going back and forth between ESO and other games that have action combat is that the action combat in most other games, if not all, has a much more substantial bass element to it. Like I'll be playing some other game and then I'll switch to ESO and I'll feel like my subwoofer just turned off. It's very treble, very like high in the decibel range. Or I mean, I'm not a sound designer, so I don't know the specifics, but I know that if I'm playing another game, and I could name a few, for example, but you know, if I hit with my two-handed hammer, it's this like really like oomph. And I hit with a two-handed sword in ESO, and it's like
No, that's great.
Like
That's great. So I didn't know that.
That's excellent.
So I'm wondering why, and it's not just combat sounds, like there just doesn't seem to be a lot of bass in ESO at all.
We need to ask our audio guys. Maybe there's a bug, maybe it was off, and you know, obviously so many people play with headphones.
I play both the speakers and headphones, and I agree either way, whether I'm using my Astros or whether I'm using my 2.1, just desktop speakers.
Right.
There's no bass. I don't know.
I'll pull in one of our audio guys for one of the sessions. We'll find an appropriate one.
This would be help for the topic before, how hard I will be hit. Or,
feedback, right.
More bass, more hit.
And you can even have the feeling that you hit harder and you are causing more damage. Just because you have a better sound. That's just a matter of feeling.
The new Force Shock has a ton of bass on it, though.
Just turns into a rave.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, okay, it's other game, it's Hearthstone. If you, with a small boom, and if you hit with 8, boom!
And the crowd cheers too.
The rumbling of the screen and so on, you see that was hard.
Just out of curiosity, how many people are experiencing that with the bass? Because I don't know if it could be a specific audio card or a specific audio driver issue we have with our game. But several sounds like that.
Well, I wanted to build off of Atropos' thing. I think that's a really good point. Like, if you use impulse, like, it's a fire explosion. I feel like there should be some sub to that, I know this is going to be extreme, but an example of like C4, there is bass when C4 goes off. It is an explosion. It doesn't feel like an explosion. It's like king, and like the sound when it hits multiple adds, it's like someone's like knocking on a door or something. Do you know what I mean? When you're like standing there, the sound just doesn't sound right. If you know what I mean, like if you're getting hit by a fire wave, does it sound like you're knocking on a door? Do you see what I'm saying? It's like a click, clunk, 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 like that when you're hitting them.
Right.
I don't know if you guys.
Right. We might be playing the default sound instead of an appropriate sound.
We do have an audio representative on our team. I apologize for not inviting him to this meeting,
but on the flip side of that, it gives you a sense of you're hitting something. But it doesn't sound right. But it's kind of a double-edged sword there.
We will pass this.
I have kids. I never get to hear the game, so.
Same here. They won't let me talk. They're sleeping.
Your thunder sounds awesome though. Like it sounds really
Yes.
like
Well, let me ask you this, do you hear the bass on the thunder?
Yes, I hear the bass on the thunder.
Okay.
That's like the one sound effect. that
So it does work.
It does work.
I actually thought it was a thunderstorm outside.
Yeah, that sound effect.
Yeah,
is
I know it, it's amazing.
Yeah.
I just think the rest of the game isn't at that level. I don't know.
Heißen denn die Dinger jetzt nochmal, die von oben?
We'll get the audio guys in for another session. It's 12 o'clock now, so I don't know if we have to break.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. We really appreciate your time, and we've got lots of notes, and we're going to go back and go through them and put together an agenda for.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you for your time, guys. Thank you.